The chamber was cold and vast. Tall windows looked out into the black space of the galaxy. Stars shone like diamonds scattered across endless darkness. The Galactic Council met at Zephyr Prime, a space station built by many species working together. This station had watched over the galaxy for thousands of years. Captain Lisa Morgan stood near the back of the chamber. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's Space Navy. Her face was hard and calm. She had fought many battles. She had lost many friends. Today, she would try to save lives using words instead of weapons. Ambassador Nathan Foster stood beside her. He was older than Morgan, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years trying to make the galaxy a safer place through talking and agreement. Today, he hoped his words would finally matter. The council members sat in a great circle. Each one came from a different species. Vexter was a tall reptile with scales that shone like metal. His species controlled many worlds and many ships. Krell was an insectoid being, his body made of hard brown plates. Soren was different from all the others, a being made of crystal that caught the light and threw it into rainbows. There were others too, each one powerful, each one rich, each one used to being heard and obeyed. The meeting had started an hour ago. Captain Morgan had presented maps, data, and recordings. She had shown the council images of Zorathian warships building near the border. She had shared intercepted messages where Zorathian commanders talked about invasion plans. She had evidence that the Zorathians were preparing to attack peaceful colonies and enslaved species that could not fight back. The council had listened. Then they had dismissed her. Vexter spoke first. His voice was deep and filled with mockery. The humans come to us with fears and warnings. They see shadows in every corner. They are new to the galaxy. They do not understand how things work. The Zorathian Empire has been peaceful for many cycles. They are our trade partners. They are our neighbors. Why would they attack? Krell made a sound like clicking insects. The humans are young. Very young. Their species has been in space for only one generation. They do not have the wisdom to understand galactic politics. Let them learn by experience. Soren's crystal body reflected the light. His voice was like wind chiming. I have watched this galaxy for 10,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have learned that fear is often the worst advisor. These humans speak from fear, not from knowledge. Captain Morgan stepped forward. Her voice was steady and clear. The evidence is real. The messages are real. The warship movements are real. We have intercepted their communications. They are not being peaceful. They are preparing for war. They want to take the Deshan colonies. They want to enslave the merchant worlds of the southern systems. If you do nothing, millions will die. Vexter laughed. His laugh was harsh and cold. Millions? The Zorathians are not barbarians. They may be ambitious, but they are not monsters. And even if they were, the Council has treaties with them. We have agreements. You cannot simply attack a Council ally because you are afraid of what they might do. We are not asking to attack anyone, Ambassador Foster said. His voice was quiet but strong. We are asking you to prepare. We are asking you to send a diplomatic team to the Zorathian Empire. We are asking you to ask them directly about their military movements. If they are peaceful, they will have nothing to hide. If they refuse to answer, then you will know the truth. A younger council member from a rabbit-like species spoke up. I think Ambassador Foster is right. We should at least ask. But Vexter shook his head. No, we will not insult our partners by doubting them. The humans have presented suspicions, not proof. Any civilization could be gathering ships for defense. Any species could be moving their military forces around. This means nothing. Captain Morgan felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had trained for this. She knew how to control her feelings. Then we ask that you at least allow smaller species to prepare. Let the Deshans strengthen their defenses. Let the merchant colonies build shelter and defensive weapons. If the Zarathians are peaceful, this will cause no problem. If they are not peaceful, these preparations might save lives. Soren's crystal form seemed to dim. Captain Morgan, you speak with passion, but passion is not evidence. The Council voted long ago to not interfere with the internal military decisions of allied species. The Zarathians have the right to gather their fleet. We cannot tell them what to do with their own military. To do so would be to betray our agreements with them. The vote came quickly. The Council decided to take no action. They decided to send no diplomatic team. They decided to make no warning to allied species. They decided to trust the Zarathians. The vote was clear and final. As the Council began to close the meeting, Ambassador Foster stepped forward again. He asked for one moment to speak. The Council leader, an old being made of stone and dirt, nodded. Foster had served the Council for a long time. They would give him this final moment. Foster looked at each Council member in turn. His eyes were not angry. His eyes were sad. You have chosen not to listen. You have chosen to trust those who plan to break that trust. I hope you will remember this moment when the consequences come. He paused. Captain Morgan joined him. She stood straight and tall. She spoke in a voice that carried through the entire chamber. Humanity came to this council as friends. We wanted to work with all species for peace and safety. But we will not watch innocents burn while you sit in comfort and do nothing. We have warned you. If you will not act, then we will. And I promise you this, we will protect those you have left to die. We will stop the Zarathians. We will make them answer for what they will do. The cost of our actions will be paid in fire and blood. The Zarathians will lose their war. Your worlds will burn in that war. This is not a threat. This is a fact. This is what will happen if you choose to ignore us. The chamber went completely silent. Nobody had ever spoken to the council this way. Nobody had ever made such a promise. Nobody had ever sounded so certain. Vexthera's face turned dark with anger. You dare to threaten this council? Remove these humans at once. But Captain Morgan and Ambassador Foster were already walking toward the exit. They did not run. They did not hurry. They simply walked out, and nobody tried to stop them. As they left the chamber, Morgan knew the truth. The council would not listen. The council would do nothing. And very soon, her words would become reality. The war was coming. Humanity would have to fight it alone. But they would fight it, and they would win. And everything the council had worked for would burn. She did not feel joy at this knowledge. She felt only the cold weight of responsibility. The galaxy had made its choice. Now everyone would have to live with what came next. The Deshan world was beautiful. Endless green fields stretched across the surface. Tall plants grew from rich soil, and their crops fed millions. The Deshan people were gentle beings. They had soft fur and kind eyes. They created art and music. They had never known war. They had no weapons. They had no military. They believed that the galaxy would protect them, because they had never hurt anyone. The Zarathan fleet appeared. Without warning, 100 warships fell from the sky like metal rain. They came with weapons firing before anyone could even send a distress signal. The first wave of attacks destroyed the main city in seconds. Buildings that had stood for centuries burned and fell. The Deshan people ran in panic. They had nowhere to hide. They had no way to fight back. In the orbital listening post above the planet, Lieutenant Kyle Harrison was drinking coffee when the alarms started screaming. The sensors showed something impossible. A massive fleet was attacking the Deshan homeworld. Kyle's hands moved across the controls with perfect training. He sent the distress call. He recorded everything. He transmitted the data to every human ship in the sector. Then he watched the planet burn. Kyle's father was Admiral Paul Harrison, commander of the human fleet in this region. Kyle had chosen to join the military because his father had taught him about duty and honor. He had never seen true combat until this moment. Now he understood what war really meant. It meant death. It meant suffering. It meant the end of innocent lives. Captain Lisa Morgan was on the patrol ship Hunter when she received Kyle's message. She was expecting orders from the Council. Instead, she was receiving news that the Zorathians had done exactly what she had warned they would do. Morgan did not wait for orders. The Council had made their choice to do nothing. Humanity now had to make its choice. She turned to her crew. Plot a course for Desha. Full speed. All engines. We are going to stop this. Our first officer, a young woman named Nicole Grant, nodded without question. Yes, Captain. Crew is ready. The Hunter was not a large ship. It carried 40 people and some weapons, but not many. The Zorathian fleet was huge and powerful. By normal logic, the Hunter should not have even tried. But Captain Morgan had learned something important during Earth's wars. Sometimes the smallest victories matter most. The journey to Desha took 4 hours. During those hours, the Zorathian fleet continued their attack. They destroyed more cities. They killed thousands. They prepared to land ground troops to capture the surviving Deshans and take them as slaves. Governor Nathan Cross was on the surface trying to organize escape routes. He was the human representative to the Deshan colonies. He had come to help the Deshans build trade routes and teach them about galactic culture. Now he was trying to save them from genocide. Cross worked with Kessa, the young Deshan leader who had once dreamed of becoming a scientist. Now she was a soldier trying to protect her people. She organized shelters in underground caverns. She moved children and the elderly to safety. She worked without sleep, without rest, because she knew that every moment counted. Dr. Amanda Walsh was with them. She was a human scientist who studied alien biology. She had wanted to learn about Deshan culture. Now she was using her medical knowledge to help the wounded. She worked with bleeding creatures and dying bodies. She did everything she could to save lives, knowing that her efforts were small against the scale of the disaster. When the Hunter arrived, it came in fast and hard. Captain Morgan positioned the ship between the Zorathian fleet and the planet. She knew this was suicide. She also knew it was necessary. The Zorathian ships tried to move around her. Morgan blocked them. The Zorathians opened fire. The Hunter's shields flared bright with energy. The ship shook and groaned under the attack, but it held. Behind the Hunter, 12 more human ships appeared. They came from different positions and different angles. They came with weapons ready and tactics born from hundreds of years of human warfare. The human pilots had trained in Earth's atmosphere, in planetary combat, in fighting against impossible odds. This was what they had trained for. The Zorathians had always fought against larger species in space. They had never fought against humans. The first Zorathian warship tried to move closer to the planet. The human ship Valiant fired a weapon that struck its engines. The warship exploded in a massive ball of flame. The other Zorathian ships began to understand that something was wrong. Their superior numbers meant nothing against opponents who fought with skill and desperation. Captain Morgan flew the Hunter through the Zorathian formation like a ghost. Her tactical officer, Derek Barnes, controlled the weapons with perfect precision. Nothing was wasted. Every shot counted. The Zorathians fired back, but their weapons were designed for slow, armored targets. The human ships moved too fast. They turned in ways that seemed impossible. They struck where the Zorathians were weak and disappeared before return fire could hit them. The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, 20 Zerathian warships had been destroyed. Another 30 were badly damaged. The remaining ships broke formation and tried to escape. The humans did not chase them. Their mission was to protect the Deshan world, not to destroy the entire Zerathian fleet. When the shooting stopped, silence fell over the planet. The Deshans came out of their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw the human ships hovering above them like guardians. Governor Cross worked with Kessa to organize rescue operations. Dr. Walsh treated the wounded. The damage was terrible. Thousands were dead. Entire cities were destroyed. But the Deshan people still existed. They had been saved from slavery and death. That night, Kessa stood with Captain Morgan on a high platform. The Deshan leader looked at the stars. "Why did you come?" she asked. "The council told us to wait. The council said they would help. But you came instead." Captain Morgan looked at the same stars. "Because the council was wrong. Because some things are more important than following orders. Because your lives matter." Kessa nodded slowly. "What happens now?" Morgan did not have a good answer. Now the Zerathians know that humanity is willing to fight. Now the galaxy knows that we meant what we said. Now everything changes. The human captain looked down at the destroyed cities below them. Fire still burned in some places. Bodies lay in the streets. But the screaming had stopped. The bombing had stopped. The Deshan people would survive. This was the first human victory. It would not be the last. And everyone in the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to break a promise to humanity. The message came from the Galactic Council within hours. Captain Morgan had violated the protocols. She had attacked an allied species without council approval. She had committed an act of war against the Zerathian Empire. She faced removal from her command, imprisonment, and possible execution under galactic law. But the Council's anger was nothing compared to what the Galactic News Network reported. Images of the Zerathian attack on Desha spread across every communication channel in the galaxy. People watched as defenseless beings were bombed and burned. They saw the children fleeing in panic. They saw the desperate attempts to escape a genocide. Then they saw the human ships arrive. They saw the Zerathian fleet break and run. They saw humanity fight to protect the weak. The Council called for an emergency session. Earth's representative, Secretary Helen Cooper, was ordered to appear immediately. She arrived at Zephyr Prime within 2 days, and she was not afraid. Secretary Cooper was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been chosen to represent Earth because she was smart and because she did not back down from difficult situations. She had seen human leaders before her, and she had learned that weakness was more dangerous than any weapon. The council chamber was full when she arrived. This time, it was not just the main council members. Representatives from dozens of species had come. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some looked afraid. Vexter led the attack on Secretary Cooper. His voice was loud and harsh. Earth has violated the Galactic Treaty. Earth has attacked an allied nation. Captain Morgan acted without authorization. This is piracy. This is an act of war against the Council itself. Cooper did not raise her voice. She spoke in a calm, clear tone. Captain Morgan acted on authority granted to all human commanders to protect innocent life. The Zerathian Empire attacked a defenseless population. They committed genocide. Humanity stopped that genocide. We would do it again. Krell made his clicking sound. You admit that you violated protocols. You admit that you disobeyed council orders. Yes, Cooper said simply. We disobeyed orders that would have resulted in mass death. We followed a higher law. We followed the law of conscience. The reptilian council member Vexter stood. Then Earth must be expelled from the council. All human trade must cease. All human ships will be barred from Council space. Your species will be made an outcast. Before the Council could vote, something unexpected happened. The rabbit-like council member from the earlier session stood. His name was Advisor Finn, and he represented the smaller species of the outer territories. I move to discuss this further before any punishment is decided, Advisor Finn said. I have something the council needs to hear. Finn showed reports that had come from across the galaxy. The Zorathians had attacked 3 other colonies since Thesha. They had destroyed 2 merchant stations. They had killed thousands in coordinated strikes against species that had no military. In each case, the species had sent desperate calls for help. In each case, the Council had done nothing. But in each case, Finn said, human ships arrived. In each case, human pilots stopped the attack. In each case, humanity saved lives while the Council watched and did nothing. The crystal being Soren made a sound like wind. This does not change the fact that protocols were broken. No, Secretary Cooper said. But it shows why the protocols were wrong. You created rules that prevented protection. You created systems that allowed the strong to kill the weak. Captain Morgan refused to accept that. Humanity refused to accept that. And now, species that would have died are alive because of what we did. The chamber erupted in noise. Different species argued in different languages. Some wanted Earth punished. Others wanted to support humanity. The Council was breaking apart. Admiral Paul Harrison, Kyle's father, arrived at the station to support Secretary Cooper. He was the head of the human military, and he had a statement to make before the Council. Humanity joined your council with hope, Admiral Harrison said. We wanted to be part of something larger. We wanted to help create a safer galaxy. But we have learned that your council values rules more than lives. We have learned that your agreements with powerful nations matter more to you than the death of weak ones. He paused. His face was hard. The council has a choice to make. You can expand your rules to protect the innocent. You can create systems that actually prevent genocide. You can work with us to build a better galaxy. Or you can punish us for saving lives. But understand this. If you punish us for what we did, humanity will continue to do it anyway. We will be outlaws rather than members, but we will still protect the weak. We will still answer the calls for help. We will still fight the Zorathians. Your punishment cannot change what we are. The vote to expel Earth from the Council was called. But when the votes came, it was not unanimous. 7 council members voted to expel Earth. 8 council members voted against expulsion. The final vote came from Soren, the crystal being. Soren had watched the galaxy for 10,000 years. He had seen many species rise and fall. He had believed in rules and structure. But he had also seen what happened when rules protected the wrong things. I vote against expulsion, Soren said. The protocols failed. The council failed. Captain Morgan and the human species did what we should have done. Punishment is not the answer. Change is the answer. The council could not agree to expel Earth. But they also could not agree to completely support humanity. They created a compromise. Humanity would face sanctions. Trade restrictions will be placed on Earth. Human ships would be limited in their movement through Council space. But Earth would remain a member. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. Secretary Cooper accepted the terms with a calm face, knowing what it meant. Earth would suffer economically. Earth would face isolation. But the sanctions would not stop humanity from protecting the weak. As Secretary Cooper left the council chamber, she understood what Admiral Harrison had already learned. The old galactic order was ending. The age of the weak being defenseless was over. Humanity had changed the rules of the game. and nothing would ever be the same again. In the merchant colonies and the outer territories, small species watched what had happened. They saw that humanity had been punished for saving their lives. They saw that the Council had rewarded the Zorathians for their violence. And they understood the terrible truth. They could no longer rely on the Council. They would have to rely on humanity. By breaking the protocols, Captain Morgan had broken the entire system. The galaxy would never trust the Council again. And in that broken system, humanity would rise to fill the space that had been left empty. The Zorathian Empire was vast. It controlled hundreds of worlds. It had a military force that outnumbered humanity by 10 to 1. But the Zorathians had a problem. They had believed their own lies. They had believed that they were invincible. They had believed that humanity was weak. Now they were learning differently. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the human fleet from the command ship Victory. Her tactical officer, Derek Barnes, sat beside her analyzing data from every battle. Derek had studied human military history since he was young. He understood the tactics that had won wars on Earth. He understood how to strike enemies where they were weakest. The Zorathians fought like machines. They moved in formations. They expected their opponents to follow the same patterns. They did not expect weapons to come from unexpected angles. They did not expect ships to move in ways that broke their understanding of physics and tactics. The first major battle happened at the Meridian Station, a large Zorathian military base. Derek suggested an approach that no military strategist would have considered acceptable. Attack from multiple angles at the same time. Use fast ships to strike and retreat. Do not fight for territory. Fight to destroy Zorathian warships. Captain Morgan approved the plan. The human fleet attacked like a storm. Ships came from directions that Zorathian sensors had not been monitoring. Weapons fired on Zorathian vessels from ranges they had not expected. Within hours, 40 Zorathian warships had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost only 3 ships. General Victoria Stone led the ground operations. She was a tactical genius trained in Earth's harshest environments. She understood that war was not about glory. War was about winning with the fewest losses. War was about understanding your opponent and turning their strengths into weaknesses. When human ground forces landed on the Zorathian colony world of Cos Prime, they found slavery camps. Thousands of captured beings from other species worked as slaves for the Zorathians. They were weak and starving, but Victoria Stone freed them all. She organized the freed slaves to help gather intelligence about Zorathian defenses. She used local knowledge to guide her forces through unfamiliar terrain. The Zorathians fought back, but they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. They were used to fighting other species that had traditional military structures. They were used to fighting enemies that fought the way they fought. Humanity did not fight that way. The Zorathian emperor was named Velcorax. He was ancient by the standards of his species. He had ruled for 300 years. He had conquered dozens of neighboring species. He had never lost a war. He had never faced an opponent that could match his military strength. Combined with his strategic knowledge, now he was facing humanity. Velcorax watched from his palace on Zereth Prime as reports came in from his commanders. Each report was worse than the last. The colonial forces at Cos Prime had been defeated. The fleet at Meridian Station had been destroyed. The military outposts along the trade routes were being captured one by one. The Emperor sent message after message to the Galactic Council. He demanded intervention. He demanded that the Council stop the human aggression. He reminded them of their trade agreements and their mutual defense pacts. The Council did not respond. The Council was paralyzed. They could not decide what to do. Some members wanted to support the Zorathians. Others believed that the Zorathians deserved what was happening. The council that had once controlled the galaxy was now useless. Back on Earth, factories were running at full capacity. Humans who had never built weapons were working in shipyards. Designers created new weapons based on ancient Earth technologies adapted for space. Engineers refined designs that made human ships faster and more deadly. The entire human civilization was mobilizing for war. This was something the Zorathians did not understand. On Zereth, only the military was trained for combat. The rest of the species did other work. But on Earth, everyone understood that they were fighting for survival. Old people worked in factories. Young people joined the military. Artists created designs for weapons. Writers wrote training manuals. Farmers grew extra food. The entire species became a weapon. Captain Morgan led a fleet of 200 human warships to the heart of Zorathian space. This was a fleet that had not existed 3 months earlier. These were ships that had been built as fast as human industry could make them. These were pilots and crew trained in the tactics of human victory. The Zorathians tried to stop her. They sent their greatest fleet, 500 ships under the command of their finest military strategist, a being named Krulver. The battle lasted for 2 full days. Derek Barnes coordinated the human fleet with perfection. He did not try to fight the Zorathians head-to-head. Instead, he broke them apart. He attacked their supply lines. He destroyed their communication ships. He isolated their groups and destroyed them one at a time. By the end of the battle, the Zorathian fleet was destroyed. 300 ships were gone. The rest were running. Krulver was captured. When he met with Captain Morgan, the Zorathian general understood at last what had happened. He had fought an enemy that used tools he did not have. He had fought an enemy that thought differently. He had fought an enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything. How? Krulver asked. How did you defeat us? Your ships are smaller. Your crews are smaller. You have fewer weapons. Captain Morgan looked at him. You fought the way you always fought. You expected your opponent to do the same. You believed in tradition and structure. We believed in winning. We did whatever it took to survive. From his palace on Zereth Prime, Emperor Velcarax watched his empire crumble. His fleets were destroyed. His colonies were falling. His authority was ending. The Zorathian civilization that had lasted for thousands of years was ending because of a species that was barely a generation old in the galaxy. He sent one final message to the Galactic Council. I was wrong. I underestimated humanity. I believed their warning was a bluff. It was not a bluff. They have fulfilled their promise. My worlds burn. My people face extinction. I asked for surrender terms. But by then, Captain Morgan was already on her way to Zereth Prime. The warning had been made manifest. The fire had come. The Zorathian Empire was ending not with a bang, but with the sound of human boots hitting the ground and human flags being raised over conquered cities. The age of the Zorathians was over. The age of humanity was beginning. The war was over. The burning had stopped. Now came the harder part. Deciding what would happen next. Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the council chamber at Zephyr Prime. The same chamber where she had been mocked and dismissed months earlier now fell silent when she entered. Every species watched her. Every council member stood when she walked in. The Zorathian Empire had been stripped of its military power. Its colonies had been returned to the species that it had enslaved. Its wealth had been taken and distributed to those it had harmed. The Zorathian race itself still existed, but as prisoners in their own worlds with limited power and strict controls on their military. They would never again be a threat to the galaxy. But Captain Morgan had not come to the council to celebrate this victory. She had come to change how the galaxy worked. Admiral Paul Harrison stood beside her. He was her father in spirit, if not in blood. He had commanded human forces across the galaxy. He had made humanity into the dominant military power. But he was not here to claim dominion over the galaxy. He was here to prevent anyone else from dominating the galaxy the way the Zorathians had. Secretary Helen Cooper stepped forward with documents. These documents outlined a new system for galactic defense. Instead of individual species fighting individual wars, there would be a united force. All species would contribute military ships and soldiers to this unified defense. The defense force would be commanded by a council made up of representatives from all member species. Any species that attacked another would face the entire defense force attacking them. This system, Captain Morgan said, is built on a simple idea. The strong will protect the weak. Not for power, not for conquest, but because it is the right thing to do. The Leshan leader Kessa stood. She had come to the council chamber as a witness. Her people had been saved by humanity. Now she wanted to speak. The Zorathians destroyed my world, Kessa said. My people were killed. My cities burned. But Captain Morgan and the human military saved us. They did not take our land. They did not demand we become their slaves. They simply protected us and left us free. This is what the galaxy needs. A force that protects without taking. One after another, species stood and spoke. The Leshan spoke. The merchant colonies spoke. The freed slaves spoke. They told stories of human courage. They told stories of being saved when the council would have let them die. Then Vexter stood. The reptilian council member was older now. He looked smaller somehow, less powerful than he had before the war. He looked at Captain Morgan, and his face showed something humans had not seen from him before. Respect. I was wrong, Vexter said. His voice was quiet. I did not believe that humans could be a force for good in the galaxy. I saw only their power to destroy. I did not see their heart. I see it now. I see that humans are willing to sacrifice their own comfort for others. They are willing to fight against the council itself if they believe it is right. The Zorathian Empire fell because Captain Morgan was willing to break her own code, to go against her own council, to do what was right. Vexter stepped down from his position. I will not sit on this council anymore. I am not wise enough to lead a galaxy filled with humans. But I will support the new order. I will vote for Captain Morgan's system of unified defense. The vote was called. It was not unanimous. Some council members were afraid of change. Some were angry that the old order was ending. But the vote was clear. 87 species voted for the new system. 12 voted against. The new Galactic Order was officially created. Captain Morgan did not become the leader of the new defense force. Instead, she recommended General Victoria Stone. Victoria Stone was chosen to command the unified military because she was fair and because she did not seek power for its own sake. She wanted only to protect people. That night, Captain Morgan stood alone on the observation deck of Zephyr Prime. She looked out at the stars. She looked at the vast darkness of space that contained millions of worlds and billions of lives. Ambassador Nathan Foster joined her. He was older than when they had started this journey. The strain of the war had marked him, but his eyes were calm. We did what we came to do, Foster said. We changed the galaxy. We did, Morgan agreed. But I wonder what will come next. We have won the war. We have created a new order. But power is always dangerous. I worry that one day, humanity will become like the Zorathians. I worry that we will forget why we fought. Foster looked at the stars. That is why we must be vigilant. That is why we must teach the next generation about what happened. That is why we must never forget the warning we gave and the cost of keeping that warning. The ceremony of unity took place on the Deshan homeworld. Representatives from every species gathered. The freed slaves from the Zarathian camps were given homes on the colonial worlds. The destroyed cities of Desha were rebuilt with resources from the Unified Defense Force. The Deshan people, who had lost so much, were given the chance to rebuild. Kessa stood with Captain Morgan as they watched the first rebuilt city take shape. Young Deshan workers built houses and schools. Young human workers helped them. Young Zarathians, allowed to leave their homeworld under strict conditions, also worked on the reconstruction. The species that had once been enemies now worked together to build something better. Do you think it will last? Kessa asked. Morgan looked at the construction site. She thought about all the death and suffering that war had caused. She thought about all the ships that had burned, all the soldiers who had died, all the families that had been broken. I think it will last as long as we remember why we created it, Morgan said. As long as we remember that the strong must protect the weak, it will last. But the moment we forget, the moment we believe that power is more important than justice, it will fall. She turned to Kessa. That is why I am asking you to help me. I am going to write down everything that happened. I am going to tell the story of how the Zarathians were defeated. I am going to explain the warning that Captain Morgan gave to the Council. I want every young person in every species to know this story. I want them to understand that evil can be stopped. I want them to understand that the strong have a responsibility to the weak. Kessa nodded. I will help you. My people will remember. The entire galaxy will remember. As the sun set on the Deshan world, Captain Morgan allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in months. It was not happiness exactly. It was something deeper. It was the knowledge that she had done something important. She had fulfilled a promise. She had saved lives. She had changed the galaxy. The Zarathians had learned their lesson. The Galactic Council had learned its lesson. The entire galaxy had learned what it meant to underestimate humanity. And as stars filled the sky above the Deshan world, the new galactic order took its first steady steps into the future. The age of the powerful protecting the weak had begun. And humanity, once the outsiders looking in, was now the guardians of the galaxy. The warning had been given. The warning had been kept. And the worlds had burned. But from those ashes, something new was being built. Something better. Something that might actually last.